Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Siomak Official TV, episode 15. Today we're talking about political correctness. Now this topic was a suggestion that came from one of you guys that are following, and I just want to tell you that I really appreciate the love, the comments that you make, and just supporting the channel in that way. Please continue to do so. Give me comments, give me suggestions on what to talk about next. But today it's the topic of political correctness, and we're just going to dive straight into it. So we'll start with the first question, and that is, what is political correctness? So the term is used a lot today, and it's just something that we see on the news and we see it on social media. And I think it's very important in the beginning of a video like this to just look at the definition. What does it mean? So I've put up two definitions here. From two different dictionaries, and I'm going to read them both out, and we'll start with the Cambridge Dictionary. Alright, so political correctness: the act of avoiding language and actions that could be offensive to others, especially those relating to sex and race. I will also read from the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, because I find this particular definition a bit more realistic somehow. Politically correct: conforming to a belief that language and practices which could offend political sensibilities, as in matters of sex or race, should be eliminated. Should be eliminated. Could this be the censorship that we see on many different platforms, like social media, YouTube, for example? We'll talk more about that later. So we've looked at the definitions now in the dictionaries, and I think that's always a good thing. You know, you're going to notice me doing that a lot when I speak about different words or terms that are being used, because it's very important to just look at the meaning. Because when we speak about a topic, or when you speak to someone else about a topic, it could be anything. I think it's always good to just define what you're talking about, the word or the topic, because it's very easy. I've noticed this in my own conversations with people, that the word or the topic, let's say, we're defining it in different ways. We're thinking about it in different ways. And therefore, I think it's always good in a debate or in a conversation with someone to just start off by defining the word or subject. So, before we continue, I think it's good that we also hear from someone else a little bit about like the definition or like a summarize of political correctness. And I'm going to show you a short clip of a man named Jordan Peterson, where he explains political correctness in a very good way. And it's just 1 minute, so enjoy this clip.
There is out there an appetite against political correctness, which is what you have described this as. In fact, your YouTube video is called Professor Against Political Correctness. But let's make sure we're all speaking the same language here. You would define that how? Political correctness.
Well, I think it's a particular kind of ideological game, and I think the outcome is twofold. It's to make the player feel morally superior, and also to take rather serious axe swings at the foundation of society. And so the game is identify a domain of human endeavor, note that there's a distribution of success. Some people are doing comparatively better and some people are doing comparatively worse. Define those doing worse as victims. Define those doing better as perpetrators. Identify with the victims. Have yourself a set of enemies handy to vent your resentment on. Feel good about it, even though it didn't really require any work on your part, and then endlessly repeat. And that's why I've seen that happening on campuses in particular for the last 30 years.
In your YouTube talk, you describe those who...
There you have it, just a little summarize or definition from Jordan Peterson. If you want to hear more about this topic, political correctness, I would strongly suggest that you check out Jordan Peterson. He really is political correctness' #1 enemy, you could say. And he knows what he's talking about. He has a lot of great detail and experience on the topic. I can tell you right now that he has inspired me for some years now, and I've learned a lot from him, and I've been inspired to also talk more openly about political correctness. Jordan Peterson is also a good example of how political correctness can literally destroy a man's career, but at the same time make that man very famous. So I won't share too much more about his history. If you don't know it, then you should check it out. I'll put a link to his own website in the descriptions below. Before I get into why I believe political correctness is dangerous, I would like to share some examples when it comes to like the sociological and psychological aspects of this. So, how is it that some of the greatest countries in the world, when it comes to liberty, freedom, advanced technology, or infrastructure, are also the countries where political correctness, cancel culture, etc., is being most demonstrated? This is something that I've been thinking about a lot lately. So right now I'm speaking my own opinions, right? When I say, for example, that I believe that America and Sweden are among the best countries in the world when it comes to these things that I mentioned earlier. One of the reasons that many societies in the West are doing well, I believe, and has advanced greatly over the decades, is because of the narrative and the sovereignty of the individual. So, for example, things that we don't understand can be understood through individual interaction. Or things that are broken or messed up in our society can be fixed through individual interaction. Also, the best way to learn and teach and perhaps change opinions is through the interaction between individuals. So what is the opposite or alternative of the individual narrative? That's called the collectivist narrative. Today we can see that more in our society because we all belong to groups in different ways. To mention a few, the family, that's one group. Many people have that in some way. Work colleagues, the class in school, a music band, a football team, and then we have gender and ethnicity. And these last two I mentioned, they are the ones that were in the definition of political correctness. So we're going to get in more to those two topics. But there are different types of groups in society. I studied sociology for one semester a few years ago, and it was just one semester, but it was a great time, and I learned a lot because it has to do with this very thing. Now, let me just say that there is nothing wrong with this narrative. You know, I'm not going to argue against it in that way in general. I belong myself to many different groups. For example, if I meet a group of people that are like-minded when it comes to music or rap, and that's that common interest, I feel like I belong there. I feel like I can maybe be myself more there and interact and talk and share. And so then what is the issue? Because I've explained these two narratives, and there is an issue here. So what is that big issue? So I believe essentially, so first and foremost, I am an individual, or we are individuals. I don't believe that essentially we are part of a group. So there's a difference there. This right here is the issue, because now we're talking about two different ways of viewing life or living. If you believe that you're essentially a part of a group, then I think there's a risk that you will view history or other groups or individuals in your own group context. So this is where the issue has come up, I believe, in many different situations that we've seen. This could become dangerous when you want society, rules or laws or other things to be adapted or to fit into your group context. Many conflicts have started between groups with different status or power, but now we're going to look at one specific conflict, and that leads right into this topic of political correctness. The conflict between collectivist groups and freedom of speech. In America, for example, the conflict could be described as left and right, or people who want to limit free speech, could be left or Democrats, and people who value the Constitution and free speech. Maybe they would be called right and Republicans. Now, I'm speaking in generally now. Of course, there are some people on the left that values the Constitution and vice versa. I'm just trying to paint a picture here. These conflicts are happening right now, and if you follow the news, you can see that there is a great war against free speech. And it is happening in the name of political correctness. Before I continue, let me just quickly share where I stand when it comes to free speech. I know I've mentioned it in a previous video, but I think it's good for me to just say it once and for all a little bit more clear. I believe free speech is something valuable. It's something that is beneficial to our societies. I believe free speech should be a human right and a law that protects it, that protects that right. I also believe, of course, that free speech can cause conflicts in itself by just people saying stupid things. But that falls under the individual responsibility, I believe. Just because some people can't control their mouths and behave in a proper manner, that doesn't mean that their free speech should be limited or taken away. As far as I'm concerned, we should have the right to say exactly whatever we want. And then you might be like, wait, what about violent speech or speech that encourages violence? No. Okay, so let me give an example. I should have the right to express that I don't like that person. That's my right to express that. However, I should not have the right to encourage violence against that person, or to be threatful to that person. You see the difference there? So I think maybe now you understand a little bit more why I believe political correctness can be dangerous. Because it wants to limit or eliminate, like we saw in the definition, free speech or parts of free speech. But that doesn't matter. Since I value free speech, I'm going to protect it in this way by speaking against political correctness. All right, so I'm going to share some different examples of this conflict, and I will be using some real stories or news article, and you can check them out for yourself. All the links will be in the description below. We saw earlier in the definitions there that political correctness wants to limit language to protect two groups, sex or gender, and race or ethnicity. So let's start with sex or gender. To identify as something else, for example, a boy identifying as a girl or vice versa, has probably been happening everywhere throughout history for some people. Meaning, I don't think it's a majority, but it has happened and it happens, and that doesn't bother me. Who am I to judge? You know what I'm saying? I mean, I've had my experience of identifying as something else, like being half Swedish, half Iranian. My childhood was a complete mess at during some years. I didn't know if I should identify as a Swede or an Iranian. Should I identify with the Swedish culture or Iranian culture, with the religions, Christianity, the religion, from my mother's side, or Islam from my father's side? To identify as something else, it could be cultures, ethnicity, but it could also be gender, of course, or different things. I think it's natural that all people, or many people, have some kind of experience with that. It's like something that goes through our minds, and my point is that I am not the one to judge people when it comes to that. Let's take it a bit further. Today we have people that identify as animals, other ethnicities, and even people that identify in another age. You can check out these 3 specific stories. They're all real. So this happens, you know. And again, who am I to judge? You can identify as a toaster, and it won't bother me, really. Like, you go about your business, and I go about my business. There is no need to point fingers. I really believe that. Before, a few years ago, I was probably more of a pointing finger guys. But I'm not today, and I'm pretty happy about that, because it's not my job to judge anyone. However, here's where the problem comes. My problem is when people want to change laws, or laws are being changed or adapted to protect these small numbers of people by limiting all other people's free speech. This is where it becomes an issue for me. So as of today, that's not really happening in a lot of places. It's not like this is, you know, happening everywhere. No, I'm not saying that. We do have some examples. One example is Canada, and Canada's Bill C-16. This bill actually makes it possible for people to get a fine or thrown in jail for using the wrong pronoun, for example. I've looked through this bill, and it's not as bad as it could be. So you're probably not going to get a ticket by accidentally saying the wrong pronoun to someone. However, if you repeatedly say the wrong pronoun and it becomes or counts as a discrimination, the person is more likely to get a fine or spend some time in jail. Why do I believe this is crazy or nonsense? Because there is a split opinion among scientists and people when it comes to biology and genders. This is very clear. Now, it might not look clear when you look at news or a lot of media, social media platforms, because I feel like there's one group that has a bigger saying in this. But I do believe from the bottom of my heart that there is a big split decision among scientists and people when it comes to just the science behind all of this. So if a person don't have the motive to discriminate another person, but that person simply only believes in the science that suggests that there are only 2 genders, that person should not be fined or put in jail for refusing to saying that pronoun. This is what I believe. I think that's crazy. That's nonsense. Because we have to remember the language that we've had for many, many years, and just to change that all of the sudden during these last few years, to change that and to make these rules and expect all people to be okay with that, I don't feel like that's okay. Universities play a big role in this war. And since a majority of universities are politically correct, I would say, well, it then becomes harder for students and also teachers, or especially teachers, to think and express freely. I believe this is very dangerous. It's not only an attack on free speech, but it's also an attack on an individual's freedom to believe in something or to think freely. Aren't students supposed to be critical and learn how to criticize and fact check sources, etc.? Well, from the stories that I've heard, there are not that many students who dare to question these different politically correct ideologies, because that could lead to discrimination or even suspension. So with that being said, I fear that Bill C-16 is just the beginning of something much worse when it comes to free speech. And I guess we're just going to have to wait and see. There's not much else we can do. By the way, there's a link as well to Bill C-16 in the description, so you can check that out for yourself as well. Last example, before we run out of time, we're going to look at a little bit about just at race or ethnicity. This is also something that we see on the news all day, the war on racism, the war on colors. Recently, on the 28th of June, African-American hammer and weight thrower Gwen Berry was involved in some controversy. During the trial events for the Tokyo Olympics, Gwen decided to turn away from the American flag, while her fellow athletes faced the flag with their hand on their hearts. You know, this is costume, and it's always been that way, I guess. So why did she do this? According to Gwen herself, it was her way of protesting against systematic racism in the United States. The reaction to this has been very strong on both sides. I would say that Gwen did the political correct thing to do. I think it's absolutely wrong and unprofessional of her to do that, but I think as well it was the political correct thing to do. She probably thought that as well. She felt that she needed to do something controversial in order to protect a group of people, in this case, I guess all black people in America, because they apparently suffer from systematic racism. Are you seeing the patterns in these different examples that I'm laying out for you? Political correctness is everywhere. And it's in sports. And in sports, it doesn't maybe affect the speech in the same way as in other areas, but it forces other things. For example, I enjoy soccer. I watch a lot of soccer, Premier League, Champions League, and all the players are expected still, this is from when Black Lives Matter started, but still 1 year later or even more than 1 year later, they're expected to kneel before the game starts. So it's a nice gesture, perhaps, this kneeling down. But Lord helps the player that doesn't want to kneel down. The political correct mob would be after that guy in seconds, and he could destroy his whole career. See, the problem with all this is probably not the motives of these people. I think it comes from compassion. But when it's forced upon people, that's when it becomes a serious issue. Another example during the Black Lives Matter riots was when different mobs that were running the streets walked up to people. There's so many different videos, you can check it out. They walked up to people sitting on a park bench, an old lady, people sitting at a diner eating, and they forced them to do the say his name thing. Again, the political correct movement is using force as a tool to change people's mind. And this, my friends, is called tyranny. This is not democratic. This is not just. This is wrong in many ways. In fact, if the political correct movement, if these people are doing these things out of love and compassion, then they should go about these things with love. Why would someone listen to you if you try to force them? From all my studies and from all I've been watching and reading these last years when it comes to political correctness, I have learned one thing, and that is that it is in fact dangerous. The censoring of opposition in the streets, in stores, online, social platforms is very dangerous, and it's not democratic. The opinions on both sides and the support on both sides are strong. And therefore, we can only go further by talking with one another. Dialogue, respectful debates, communications. It's the only way forward And since political correctness is doing the opposite thing, limiting or eliminating, I cannot and will not accept it. Ladies and gentlemen, who knows? This very episode, or even this channel, could be removed, taken down. And that would only prove my point. I might lose followers because of this, but you know what? I really don't care. Because for me, this is about standing up for something. And being against political correctness, woke culture, cancel culture, and so many other things, this is a hill that I'm ready to die on. Let me end this video with a quote by Stéphane Molyneux, probably French. Those who make conversations impossible make escalation inevitable. Thank you so much for watching this video, and thank you for suggesting the topic. Please continue to give comments and share your ideas. If you have any thoughts about this video, share them with me. I would love to hear your thoughts about political correctness. What do you think about it all? And yeah, just continue to support me, and if you like the content. And I hope you guys have a great week, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.